أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. We started our discussion in the previous lecture where we said we will be discussing issues related to spirituality in this month of Ramadan for the 3-4 lectures we have in the month of Ramadan. If Allah gives tawfiq, we might continue with this discussion, inshallah. So the discussion we started was this, that, and I believe this is one of the fundamental discussions in regards to spirituality or even deen or our emotions, how we express them. One of the fundamental prerequisites in all these aspects of our life is that we should allow the intellect to govern all these aspects of our life. So what we said was that spirituality without being governed by the intellect, emotions without being governed by the intellect, rather according to the Imams, even the religion without being governed by the intellect will result into a disaster. Okay? Now, then I say that we will be getting into examples, but before I get into examples, I would like to mention 1 or 2 more points, and then I get into the examples. Now, the reason I'm doing this is when we come and give examples, you will notice that this issue of spirituality is such that when people enter spirituality or people deal with emotions, people forget their aql and intellect. It's as if they park aside their intellect somewhere else and they enter the world of spirituality very blindly. Okay, now I'm not generalizing this by saying this is with everyone, but you will see this is a common trend within a lot of these mystical groups, these so-called Sufi groups and all that. You will see this is happening a lot. As we go on, we'll give examples. They tend to allow the aql to go into sleep and just enter into the world of spirituality without thinking, without even reasoning. So to give you a context, for those of you who are a bit old like me, so 25, 30 years back, I remember when I was in school, this was in my secondary school, there was a book published by the name of Journey to the Unseen World. The claim of the book was that a scholar goes to the unseen world and comes back and narrates his own story of what happened and what he saw there. Now, this had an effect. Even for me personally, it had a very big effect on me. Then later on, when I came to the Islamic seminary, then there was another book published by the name of Elixir of Love, the biography of Rajab Ali Khayyat, for those of you aware. It really had an impact. Again, for me also, it had an impact also. But not realizing that these books have errors in them. And the point I'll be making, it'll make it clear why I'm mentioning these books. So I remember then, at that time, listening to Dr. Farooq Sekalashfar, again, if I'm not mispronouncing his name. I remember very clearly, I heard this lecture of his, might be on YouTube. I heard this lecture 20 years back, if I'm not mistaken. He calls this book, Elixir of Love, spiritual advertising. This is the actual word he uses, yeah? That this is a book doing spiritual advertising. Rather, he says that he went to the publishers and he asked them that this book has a lot of errors inside it. There are a lot of anti-Shari'i things, things which are not supported by the Sharia. Please don't publish this book. But the publishers went ahead and published that book, and that's when he delivered that lecture by the name of False Mysticism, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? Now, lately in Iran, and it's been translated in English. Now, I don't know the effect it has had in the English world, but in Iran, It has had a huge effect. 29 editions of this book has been published, to give you a picture of how much uh, influence this book has. So the book's name is Se Daqiqe Dar Qiyamat, 3 minutes to in Qiyamat. I don't know if it's the same translation in English or no, but what has happened is that all these books have a similar theme of sharing supernatural things about personalities. Okay? Now, this is where spirituality comes in, that they want to enforce spirituality by mentioning supernatural things and miracles and promoting icons that Rajab Ali Khayyat was somebody who used to see in front and behind, and the list goes on. Yeah? So, to the level that when people start critiquing these books, they realize their mistakes. Then they start, editing these books. So you will notice the 14th edition and the 19th edition are different. The 19th edition and the later versions are different because they keep on editing the issues which have been critiqued upon. Okay, showing you that these books have a lot of issues in within them. Now, all these books, even this 3 minutes in Qiyamah, the name is very clear that a person had a near-death experience. Now, near-death experience is not something I deny, okay? It's just that these exaggerations which come with it, these are the issues, number one. And number two, spirituality, and this is a point, if you take this important point with us, it'll be very important that in spirituality, I can experience some things. I can have religious experiences and spiritual experiences. But to come and tell people is where the question mark starts now. Okay, so as if I eat food and I feel the taste and I can feel the best of the taste, but the food is not tasty at all. When I come and tell somebody else that this is tasty, I cannot express what I went through. Okay, similarly in spirituality. Now, why do I mention this? This is where I want to share this hadith of the Imams alayhi salam. So the sixth Imam is attributed to have said this hadith. Some might say this hadith is chainless. It doesn't have a chain of narrators. Yes, I agree. It doesn't have a proper chain. But I'm quoting these two hadith because they are totally verified throughout the Quran. And you open the Quran and you can verify this to a hadith. Okay? So the sixth Imam alayhi salam says, Man dakhala fil iman bi'ilmin thabata fihi. The one who attains iman, notice the word used, attain. When you go and attain iman and faith, but bi'ilmin, with knowledge, with reasoning, with evidence. Not that you just go blindly, follow personalities and follow people blindly. No, you have to go with reasoning. Then Imam says, thabata fihi. Then he will be able to stay steadfast in that path. And وَنَفَعَهُ إِيمَانُهُ. And his iman will help him in this world and the hereafter. But وَمَنْ دَخَلَ فِيهِ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ, the one who enters the fold of iman without ilm and without reasoning and knowledge, خَرَجَ مِنْهُ كَمَا دَخَلَ فِيهِ. He will come out of it the way he got in. So easily he came in and so easily he comes out. And this is exactly what we are noticing in our communities today. That one small doubt somebody puts in and the whole community starts shaking. Okay, this is because the basis is not reasoning and not knowledge. The basis is something else. Okay, the other hadith, this is beautiful hadith. The Imam alayhi salam says that the one who takes his religion from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he says, زالت الجبال قبل أن يزول. The mountains will move, but this person will not move. Do you get me? This is how much the emphasis is on learning with evidence, with understanding, and with reasoning. You can't have knowledge with looking at personalities and looking, just following personalities. No, you have to study. Okay. Now the Imam goes on. وَمَنْ أَخَذَ دِينَهُ مِنْ أَفْوَاهِ الرِّجَالِ. And this is the message I'm trying to give. That when you enter spirituality, when you enter religion, Imam says the one who takes his religion from the mouth of the people and personalities, رَدَّتْهُ الرِّجَالِ. This same people will make him come out of the religion now. Do you get me? Okay? Religion is supposed to be an evidence-based venture and not something which we just go in to it blindly. And so is spirituality. And to the level that Imams, alayhim salam, who we as Shias believe that Imam are muftaradu ta'a. Okay? When Imam and the Prophet alayhim salam tell you something, it's wajib for you to obey. There's no ifs and buts. If the Imam is in front of you or the Prophet is in front of you, he tells you something, you just obey without an ifs and buts. But notice, the same Imams, they will come and teach you, and they taught their companions that no, we don't want you to go and obey us blindly. Rather, we want you to obey us and follow us with reasoning, with evidence. Okay? So, one of the famous examples I would like to give is Zurara. Zurara in the riwayat is somebody who keeps on questioning the Imam a lot. And you will see this. At least I've seen 6-7 riwayats like this where Zurara comes and questions the Imams. I'll quote another riwayah also, and you will see that. So this riwayah is an authentic riwayah in Al-Kafi. Zurara says, I came in the presence of the fifth Imam alayhi salam, and look at the way he questions. Okay, he says, "Ala tukhbirni min ayna alimta wa qulta." Will you not inform me that where did you learn this from? So Imam was telling him a mas'ala, a fiqhi issue, and he turns back and tells him, but first tell me, where are you learning all this from? Okay, min ayna alimta wa qulta. Where did you learn this from, and why are you saying such a thing? Now Imam was giving a ruling about doing a wiping, the masah of the head and the feet. Now notice, Imam would have turned back and says, "Ikhsa ya Zurara." Shut up, keep quiet. But rather the riwayah says, فَضَحِكَ. Imam smiled and laughed. ثُمَّ قَالَ يَا زُرَارَ. Okay, and he started explaining him. The reason I'm saying this is because of this hadith and this verse of the Quran. Do you get me? This is what they were training their students to do. Follow an evidence-based religion. This is another book. It's a book by Sheikh Murtada Mutahari, Ayatollah Mutahari. His book is Divine Justice. This is a portion of it. It's called Islam and Religious Pluralism. Okay, so it's translated by Sayyid Sulaiman Hassan, and there's an introduction by Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi. The reason I'm quoting this and I'm showing this book is that the examples I'm quoting might be sensitive for some people, and I'm showing you evidence this has been approved by the scholars in the communities also. Okay, so on page 110 and 11, he quotes, Shaykh Mutahari quotes a narration. Okay, it's an interesting narration, again from Zurara and his brothers. Now, for those of you following up, you will notice that Zurara and his brothers were very different in their thinking. Okay, now we don't want to get into that. So the riwayah says that Zurara came with his brothers in the presence of the Imam, the fifth Imam alayhi salam. So the issue is about who will gain salvation on the day of judgment. This is the whole discussion. So that's not my discussion. I will not enter into the hadith. The final part of the hadith is important. Hammad says, he says that in the footnote of in the end of the narration, he says that Hammad, in his narration of this event from Zurara, narrates that he said. So Zurara said this, At this point, the Imam and I began to argue. This is the words being used, and that's how it's been translated. Okay? He was arguing with the Imam. This is uncomprehendable for us. Okay, that I go in the presence of the Imam and start discussing with him. We have always been told just accept. Now, yes, we accept it, as I said before, that whatever the Imam says, we accept it. But the same Imams are teaching us that argue, discuss. Okay, and that's why the likes of Zurara were discussing. Okay, now it doesn't stop here. The riwayah goes on to say that Zurara is saying this. Both of us raised our voices such that those outside the house even heard us. Okay, so that's how much they were talking and how much he was arguing. The Imam would have told him, sit quiet and, just listen. Rather, he was arguing to the level that his voice could be heard outside also. Okay? And that is why uh, the point I'm trying to make is that when you enter the religion, when you enter spirituality, leave aside personality worshipping. Rather, seek an evidence based spirituality. And this is where intellect comes in. So somebody asks, where in the Quran? If you go throughout the Quran, this can be proved. The whole Quran, I like saying it's an evidence-based book. قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Everywhere the mushrikeen are being told, bring your proofs. But I love this ayah, this verse. It shows how much Islam condemns personality worshipping, even to the level of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This beloved Prophet, still Allah, look at how he shares his message. The worldview of the Quran is be evidence based. Okay, don't look at the Prophet as a prophet. Look at the Prophet as a messenger of God who is bringing you a message from Allah. Okay, so what you're looking at is the message and not the messenger. Yes, we love the messenger with our hearts, but we love the message. Okay, we have to follow the message, and that's how the following of the messenger comes in. So notice, this is in the context of Battle of Uhud, verse number 144, Al Imran. وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ. Notice how it starts. Now, what happened was that you notice that there was a time when the mushrikeen came in and they started attacking. Even the Prophet got injured. So Mus'ab bin Umair and others who were Imam Ali alayhi salam and those who were defending the Prophet, they say that Mus'ab bin Umair was also killed in this period. And that's why he's buried in Uhud. So some narrations say that Mus'ab used to look like the Prophet. In this period now, the one who killed Mus'ab, he felt that he had killed the Prophet. Now, whatever the incident, they felt that they had killed the Prophet. So he starts announcing now that the Prophet has died. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has died. So what happens now? People start running, and they left and they abandoned the war. Okay, the battlefield. And this is where this verse is now revealed. Okay, وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ. The Prophet is an apostle and a messenger. قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ. Okay, before him also came other messengers. فَإِنْ مَاتَ أَوْ قُتِلَ انْقَلَبْتُمْ عَلَىٰ أَعْقَابِكُمْ. If he dies, notice, if he dies or if he's killed, are you going to turn away? Can you see the message Allah is trying to give? Don't worship personalities. And this is exactly the meaning Ayatollah Makarim also gets from this verse. That don't look at the messenger, rather look at the message. What we want you to do is that uphold the message, not the messenger. If the messenger passes away, what? You will turn away from the religion. And this is exactly the biggest problem in with personality worshipping and following religion without having the intellect over you. Okay, you just follow the person. When the person is gone, there you go also. Okay, and the examples we will give now. uh, Look at the example. I'm quoting from this this is Al Qalam Journal, volume 1. I just got hold of it. I said it's interesting if I could. Al Qalam Journal is published by I Care of World Federation. Now I'm quoting this so that you see that they themselves are also writing this. Okay. Uh, so this is on page 15. This is the first article by Sheikh Winnie Khetia. Ghulu in history and Islamic thought. The issue again, please, let's not forget what we are discussing, that when you start keeping personalities ahead, see the danger now. Okay? So, Sheikh Winay Ketia quotes this famous verse of Surah Tawbah, اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله. Yeah? So the Christians and the Jews of that time, they would take their priests and their rabbis to be arbab. They would take them as their lords besides God. So where Imam now comments, the famous hadith is that the Imam comments and says that they didn't used to worship their rabbis and their priests. Rather, they would follow them blindly. Okay, this is exactly what we are seeing. This is exactly what is required in spirituality. So Sheikh Winay Ketia then comments. He says this form of ghulu. Okay, this is the message I'm trying to give. That sometimes this path becomes so dangerous when you start entering the deen without reflection and reasoning. This form of ghulu also involves exceeding in admiration of such priests to the extent of blindly following them over what is seen to be clear dictates of God. Okay, so on one side you have the clear dictates of God, and on the other side it's what the scholars are telling you. Okay, now what do you choose? And this is what the Christians and the Jews at that time had. And they ended up choosing their scholars over the clear dictates of God. Do you get me? Now, this is all happening. Why? When a person enters religion without comprehending and reasoning. Rather, it gives a very beautiful example. There's a verse in Surah Nuh, okay, verse number 23. Prophet Nuh alayhi salam keeps on doing tabligh to his people. Now his people uh, only not rejecting him, rather now the people turn back and tell him that we are not going to abandon even our gods. Okay, the idols we are worshipping, we are not going to abandon them. So Allah in the Quran mentions the name of 5 idols. And notice, Allah hardly mentions names, but maybe this is the reason He mentions these names. 5 names are mentioned: Wad, Suwa', okay, Yaghuth, Ya'uq, and Nasr. 5 names are mentioned. Now look at what Sheikh Winay Khetia quotes from Allama Tabrisi of Majmu' al-Bayan. He says, according to At-Tabrisi, these idols were initially a group of pious people. Okay, qawmun salihun. These were pious people initially. What happened then? Okay, so he says, whose admirers were tempted by Satan to draw images of them so that they may feel closer to them. Okay, this idolizing personalities. This is exactly what happens in spirituality. People start idolizing personalities. However, this resulted in them becoming idols of worship. Okay, so these 5 were pious people at that time, But people started idolizing them. Okay, this is what happens in spirituality. You idolize your mystical master, you idolize your spiritual master to the level that it went to them becoming idols for them. And then Sheikh Winay Khatia then goes on. He says, so this is the summary of my lecture today. In this case, we see a connection between iconography and ghulu. Okay? When people are made icons, and then it ends up resulting into ghulu. Okay? So this path of spirituality is a very good path. It comes with its own challenges. Okay? Now, in the second article on page 42, this is an article from Sheikh Muhammad Baqir Malikian in the same journal. Okay? He gives a, so he's discussing the criteria of ghulu in the thought of Sheikh Saduq. One of the things he says that he discusses is that why did the ghalis become ghalis? Why did they consider imams as divine? One of the reasons Sheikh Malikian gives is because they saw the infallibles performing miracles. Okay? Miracles made them think, okay, these personalities are performing miracles, thus they are gods. They become God now, and they become divine now. Okay? So this is one of the dangers of, another danger of spirituality, of miracles, which we will be discussing, inshallah. Okay? And that is why, probably, that's my understanding, that when Ayatollah Sistani was asked, so this is in his book, Qawaid al-Fiqhiyah. This is a book signed by him. Okay? Apparently, it's questions asked from to him, and then he answers them, and then he has authorized this book to be published in his name. So Qawaid al-Fiqhiyah in volume 2, he is asked, هل يجوز الاعتقاد بالتفويض التكويني للأئمة? Are we allowed to have are we allowed to believe in this cosmic delegation? Tafweed is the whole topic altogether, yeah? Now, after that, the questioner goes on to say that now, based on the first question, what does Wilayat Takwiniyah mean? Okay, this is where the whole Wilayat Takwiniyah discussion comes in. Because Wilayat Takwiniyah is very closely tied with miracles. Is Wilayat Takwiniyah something like where Allah gives the authority and the power to the Ma'soom, that means the Prophet and the Imams alayhim salam, and they do it themselves? Or no, Allah doesn't give them the power and authority, rather they ask Allah and then Allah gives and He does it. I hope you're getting the difference, okay? This is where the whole difference lies. A lot of people I speak to also, and even unfortunately in the seminaries also at times, when we don't distinguish the definitions correctly. So Wilayat Takwiniyah again is a discussion, inshallah, if sometime in the future we have this discussion, we can define the different definitions of it, where it becomes clear what is being discussed. But you get from the questioner, he's saying that are the Imams given the power that they will do it? Or, or sorry. So, are the Imams given the power to do it, or they ask Allah and Allah gives? Okay? Now, look at the answer of Ayatollah Sistani. This is where I say that maybe he was thinking that to open this door of Wilayat Takwiniyah and getting into these supernatural issues is going to be a slippery slope. Okay? So he says, الصحيح أن يعتقد بما هو الحق عندهم اعتقادا إجماليا. Okay, ولا يجب الاعتقاد بالتفاصيل. The correct approach is that you hold a belief. Okay, you hold this general belief in the truth as established by them, and not entering the details. That means what they brought was the haqq, and what they brought was the truth. Do you get into details? Do they have authority and powers and all that? Ayatollah Sistani doesn't get into that. Okay, he says, no, there's no need to get into these tafasil and these details. On the contrary, now I'm quoting this to show you this is the contrary also available there. Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi has a book called Shiism, Imam and Wilaya on page 74. So this is where he discusses the types of wilaya. The third and the fourth type of wilaya, where he discusses socio-political and universal authority, Wilayat Takwiniyah. He says these are unique Shia beliefs. Now, this is the statement I'm interested in. They are considered as part of Daruriyat al-Madhab, the essential parts of Shia faith. Okay? Now, this statement, he's taking it from Imam Khomeini, but this is a very bold statement. Okay, to come and claim that Wilayat Takwiniyah is from the Daruriyat al-Madhab. Then he goes on. He says, it is the common view of our scholars that anyone who rejects one of the Daruriyat al-Madhab is not considered a member of a Shia sect. Now, this is a very bold statement. While scholars are still researching this topic, we still don't have a proper definition of what is Wilayat Takwiniyah first. To come and say that a person who doesn't believe in it is not part of the sect. Okay, so I'd like to just mention two books. Inshallah, later, inshallah, if Allah gives tawfiq, we can discuss them. One is this book by an Iranian author, Miracles from the Viewpoint of Aql, Intellect, and Religion. The beauty about this book is this, that he discusses the different opinions on miracles and Wilayat Takwiniyah, which is included part of miracles. Okay, so notice he separates theologians have an reasoning, mystics and the philosophers have a reasoning, those who refer to the Quran have a reasoning, those who are progressive scholars have a reasoning. He gives different views and opinions of different people. Now, a lot of people will have to come out of religion and Shiism if that is what we are planning to do. This is another book. It's a thick book, but it's beautiful. This is a research and an analysis on studies on the issue of wilaya. Okay, so there are different articles on this topic. It's a compilation of articles. Notice it's divided into three sections. Wilaya from the viewpoint of theologians, section 1. Section 2, Wilaya from the viewpoint of the philosophers and mystics. Now, interesting is the third section. Wilaya from the viewpoint of Wahy and revelation. Shows you that they are considering these three views as separate. Okay, this is within Shiism. So to come and make a claim, I'm not saying that he made a claim, but this is a statement he takes from Imam Khomeini. This requires a research, more research to come and say that it's one of the daruriyat and essentials of Shia faith. Okay? Now, two examples if I can give, and then I finish. Okay, so before I get into the examples, the point I'm trying to make is this personality worshipping when we enter spirituality is not something which is limited to Shia faith only. It's a universal issue. Okay, you will see this within within Hinduism and Buddhism. Okay, these are Eastern religions. For example, There's a lot of material now coming out of these so-called gurus being caught conducting scams and frauds and all that. So, because I'm quoting references, there's a book by Howard Murphy, if I'm not mistaken. He was an Australian who became a disciple of Sai Baba. Okay, Sai Baba, one of the gurus within the Hindu world. He then ends up writing a book. Notice the name of the book, Sai Baba, Men of Miracles. You get me? Okay, a man who is, the whole book is just trying to prove. If I had time, I would go through some quotations from the book showing you how many miracles he's quoting. It's as if it seems like these people were day in, day out conducting miracles. Now, what happens is here now, there was another disciple from the US. You see these Westerners now being inclined to these Eastern spirituality, yeah? So there's a person by the name of T.A.L. Brook. He was also a devotee of Sai Baba. But then he sees some problems, and then he writes this book, Avatar of Night. Again, a book which has gruesome details. Huh? If you go through it, I can't even mention some of the details, starting from sexual and financial and economic and so many issues Sai Baba has been alleged to have done it. Okay, this book discusses it. Now, can you see this? What happens is a disgust now comes in when you follow personalities rather than the truth. The truth is not being followed, rather personalities are being followed. Okay. Similarly, in Christianity, you are seeing now lately a lot of material is coming out of those priests who are just financially flourishing, making millions and billions. You know, there are articles out there on the millionaires from the priests. Not only that, again, other issues which are related to them. And you notice the current Christianity, which is being promoted by these so-called spiritual priests, is the Christianity where they're trying to promote exorcism. Okay, they'll bring somebody who is a jinn has taken him, shaitan has gone into him, and then they try removing that shaitan from him. This is the religion they're trying to make, and that's how they're making money also. Again, I'm clarifying, not all of them, huh? Some of them for those who we have evidence. Come into Sunnism also, before we come to Shiism. Come into Sunnism, you look at Abdul Qadir Jilani. Okay, wallahi, again, if I had time, I would be quoting examples. The way they have glorified this person, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. There's no miracle, I believe, they have left for Abdul Qadir Jilani. Okay, if you read the way from his young age to where he reaches his death. Okay, if you search it out, you will find these miracles. What I'm interested in, if I get time, I'll mention two examples. Otherwise, I'll just mention one example. One of the examples which has happened is they have not left even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Imams alayhi salam. When you enter religion, the point I'm trying to make, when you enter religion and spirituality, wanting these miracles, wanting these supernatural events to happen and issues to happen, then everything you will relate to that personality is not the message that person brings. Rather, it's more to do with these supernatural issues. So one of the things which I sincerely recommend and humbly recommend to those who are doing research, when you're doing research, if Allah gives tawfiq, inshallah, one of the intentions we have is to study history of ideas and history of concepts. Whenever you're studying a concept, especially in religious concepts, because these are things you believe in, Study the history and evolution of this concept. Look at what happened in the first century, second century, third century, until the century you're living in. How did this concept evolve? You will end up making and filling a lot of gaps in within your thinking. And you will get a picture of why something happened in this century and why did it happen like that. Okay? So one of those issues is the issues of miracles. Because we're discussing spirituality and we mentioned that this iconography is related to ghulu also, and miracles is also related to iconography. So when you come to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, look at what has been done with the miracles of the Prophet. Now, on the onset, I would like to clarify that there are scholars who believe that the Prophet didn't have any other miracle apart from the Quran. I personally don't believe in that opinion. I believe no, the Prophet had other miracles, but the number is an issue. Okay, and which miracles are we going to discuss? So let me give you an evolution in history for you to understand how even the Prophet now gets idolized at times. أَفَإِنْ مَاتَ أَوْ قُتِلْ. It's exactly the same issue now. The way we idolize the personalities. So to start with, you start in the second century and the third century. This is where we have seerah of Ibn Hisham. Now, before that, we had seerah of Ibn Ishaq, which we don't have it in our hands today. So, seerah Ibn Hisham is what we have today, and that's apparently taken from Ibn Ishaq's seerah. This is in the third century. Now, I'm quoting this from a book. This is a Syrian author by the name of George Tarabishi. Now, some people might say, oh, why are you quoting non-Shia scholars? So all what I say is this, that we will quote and bring references which are facts. Anybody who has issues with these references, bring the counter argument. There's no worry about that, okay? Once you bring the counter argument, this argument goes away. This evidence is thrown aside. So he has a book called Al-Mu'jiza aw Subat al-Aql. Okay, it's an Arabic book. He personally himself is of the opinion that the Holy Prophet didn't have other miracles but the Quran. But what he does is that he discusses the evolution of this concept of miracles about the Prophet throughout history. So he starts from seerah of Ibn Hisham. As we said, we don't have Ibn Ishaq's narrative history with us, and we have Ibn Hisham's history with us. So on page 34, he says that Ibn Hisham quotes 10 miracles of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he mentions all the 10 miracles. This was in 2nd, 3rd century. Come to 4th, 5th century, you have a scholar by the name of Abul Hasan al-Mawardi. Okay, in his book I'lam al-Nubuwwah, he now says that the Prophet had 40 miracles. You see the jump? 10 to 40. In the same period, 5th century, the famous Bayhaqi scholar, Sunni scholar, in his Dala'il al-Nubuwwah of Bayhaqi, which is a very famous book, he also quotes the same 40 miracles. But an interesting point he makes, this is on page 40 of the book, an interesting point he makes, he's the first one now to claim that the Prophet has 1,000 signs and miracles. And you notice from 40 to 1,000. Okay? And I'll explain why this jump is happening. This was in 5th century. Come to 6th century. Now, Qadi Ayyad is a famous Maliki jurist, and he was a judge also in the Muslim Spain. And he was a Maliki scholar also, so a follower of Imam Malik up and down. Now, Imam Malik in his Muwatta quotes three miracles. Now, somebody might say it's a fiqh book, so he didn't quote more, but he quotes three miracles from the Prophet. Qadi Ayyab in the 6th century comes and quotes 120 miracles for the Prophet. From 40 now to 120. You go to Ibn Kathir now. Okay, Ibn Kathir in the 8th century, okay, quotes the same amount, 120. So 6th century and 8th century, you have 120 miracles. What changed? Okay, what changed? I will come to that. In the 11th century, seerah Halabiyya, okay, Nuruddin Halabi, he now claims, he makes a claim now, that the Prophet had 3,000 signs and miracles. You get me? He doesn't quote all the 3,000. He claims, he makes this claim that the Prophet had 3,000 signs and miracles. In the same period, you have a Shi'i scholar by the name of Sheikh Amali. In his Isbatul Hudat, he quotes 720 miracles. He actually quotes them. Okay. Now some might be repetitive, but he quotes 720 riwayats of miracles about the Prophet. You get me? Okay. Now, what happened? Two things. The reason this number changed, so 120 to the more numbers, and then you have, for example, so George Tarabishi says that look at what's happening. This is in the same 8th century. Okay, you have a scholar by the name of Ibn Sayyid al-Nas in his Uyun al-Athar. When he quotes the miracles of the Prophet, he quotes them in 3 pages. You get me? Okay. Then you have Sirah Halabiyya, which we quoted in the 11th century. He quotes 25 pages of miracles of the Prophet. Okay? You come to Ibn Kathir in the 8th century. In his Bidayah wa Nihaya, he quotes 250 pages of miracles. Okay? This is something similar to what we see with Sheikh Amali also doing in the Shia world. Now the reason why did they do this? So the reason, and this is where I say that history of ideas really sorts out your problems. The reason is here that they were being challenged now that how is it possible that in the issue of miracles of the Prophet, we should rely on solitary reports, akhbar ahad. Okay? You can't rely on khabar wahid on miracles. Miracles happen, people have to keep on narrating them. So now to prove that these riwayats are not khabar wahid and solitary reports, they now want to prove there is tawatur. And that is why today some scholars claim there is tawatur in the miracles of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, this is the whole reason why it happened. Okay, this is the seerah of the Prophet. Come to the Imams alayhi salam. The same George Tarabishi quotes. So you have the miracles of the Imams alayhim salam. So in the 4th century of Khasibi or Khusaybi, whatever the name, in his Hidayatul Kubra, he says that Imams have, now Khusaybi is not a Shi'i scholar. By majority counts, he's a Ghali and the founder of, and he's ascribed to the Nusayri sect, yeah. He quotes 100 such miracles for the Imams. This is in 4th century. In the 4th and 5th century, you have 2 tabaris. If you, this is a debate and discussion within the scholars. Do we have 2 Shia tabaris or do we have 1 tabari, and Dala'il Imama, is it of tabari or not? These are discussions which the scholars are having. But according to George Tarabishi, Tabari Kabir, that is coming in the fourth. These are Shi'i Tabaris. We have a Sunni Tabari. We're not discussing about him. We're discussing the Shi'i Tabaris. In the 4th century, he comes up with 250 miracles for the Imams. The Tabari Saghir in the 5th century now comes up with 300 miracles. Okay, in a span of 1 century, you have a difference of 50. Now, you come to 11th, 12th century. This is where you have Muhaddith Bahrani and you have Sheikh Amali. Okay, Muhaddith Bahrani almost quotes 2063 miracles of the Imams. Look at the jump. Okay, now I don't want to say these are fabricated miracles or what, but I'm just trying to show you what's happening. Okay, this this affiliation with personalities makes you going into the whole field of miracles more rather than the focusing on the message itself. Yeah, 2063 Muhaddith Bahrani in his Madinatul Ma'ajiz. Sheikh Hurr Amali in his Isbatul Hudat, he quotes almost 2500, 2474 to be precise. Okay, that's how many miracles he quotes for the Imams. Do you get me? Now, I guess I'll finish with this. Sheikhism, I will leave it for some other time. There's a master's dissertation written by a person by the name of Kamran Hosseini, where he studies these riwayats. Okay, so he's studying these riwayats until the 6th century, but from the books of Allama Majlisi of Bihar and Muhaddith Bahrani of is Madinatul Ma'ajiz. He's taking miracles and the riwayats from these books, but these actual books were actually in the 6th century. So he studies these books, okay, from the 6th Imam to the 12th Imam, alayhi salam. If you count, now I have just counted in Madinatul Ma'ajiz. I've not counted how many miracles extra Allah Majlisi quotes. But the number of miracles only quoted by Muhaddith Bahrani in his Madinatul Ma'ajiz is 967 miracles for the 6 Imams. Okay, 6 to 12 Imams. 12th Imam alayhi salam. Now, the author says that he has left aside all the riwayats which don't have sanad or are mursal narrations. He says there are 681 narrations, then he studies them. I don't know if you're getting me where I'm trying to go to. Okay, 967 narrations. He examines 681, not only from Madinatul Ma'ajiz, but also from Biharul Anwar. Out of 681, notice now, this is where I'm trying to say this affiliation with these supernatural issues. This author says that out of 681 narrations, only 92 are sahih and authentic narrations, and that is also with pull and push. He uses every criteria possible to authenticate a hadith. Okay, if a rawi is weak, also he will say, okay, based on he's there in Tafsir al-Qummi, that's why we accept it. He's there in Kamil al-Ziyarat, that's how we accept it. I don't know, he is somewhere, Ayatollah Khuy is authenticated, for example, Jabir al-Ju'fi. Okay, the classical rijalis would not authenticate him. Sayyid Khuy authenticates him. So he has pulled that also. Okay, that's how he's done. With all pull and push, he has got 92 riwayats. That means 588 riwayats are weak narrations, problematic narrations. Okay, now somebody might say we are not followers of sanad and all whatnot, which I don't want to get into. What I'm just trying to say is that we don't have a basis for these 588 narrations also. Okay, who are narrating these narrations? We don't know them. Do you get me? Okay, so in conclusion, I wanted to even discuss Sheikhism. Another good example, if you guys get time, you can discuss. You can go and look into Sheikhism. Also, this is a book, Sheikhiyya and Ghulu in the issue of Imam. There's an English book. There's not much literature on Sheikhism in English, apparently. So there's a book by Dennis McCoyne. It's called From Sheikhism to Babism. Okay, so find out what happened. And it's all again based on these supernatural issues which are happening. Okay, the conclusion I want to make is this: that whenever when we enter spirituality, we need to make sure that our aql is in front everywhere. Because there are things which we will be told in spirituality, which will be done in front of us, which will be very mind boggling. Now, if you keep your aql aside and the intellect aside, then you will go into this path without thinking. Then comes even the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet and the Imams alayhi salam. You need to keep this as a criteria to be able to keep on judging spirituality. Failure to do this, the dangers are very great. And we see the examples of elixir of love. We see the examples I've been giving. All these examples I can give, and plenty of examples more we can give. Yeah. We pray to Allah. In the end, we pray to Allah to give us the real spirituality, the spirituality which will actually make us get closer to Him and be able to taste the real taste of spirituality in within us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.